The Great Chamber of the Galactic Council was the largest structure ever built by intelligent life. Its walls stretched upward for nearly a mile, covered in glowing symbols that represented every species that had ever held a seat. 47 delegations filled the curved rows of seats, each one representing billions of lives across thousands of worlds. The air hummed with translators working in real time, converting hundreds of languages into something everyone could understand. Ambassador Sam Porter walked down the central aisle toward the speaking platform. He was a tall man with gray hair and tired eyes. He had served humanity in this chamber for 23 years. His father had served before him. His grandfather had been among the first humans to ever set foot in this place, back when Earth was still recovering from its first contact with alien life. 300 years. That was how long humanity had been part of the galactic community. 300 years of service, sacrifice, and silent dedication. Sam stepped onto the platform and looked out at the assembled delegates. The Valari sat in the highest seats, their purple skin and golden eyes marking them as the oldest and most powerful species in known space. They had founded the Council 10,000 years ago. They had never let anyone forget it. The Krethians occupied the seats to the left, their massive bodies covered in thick gray scales. They were warriors, proud and quick to anger. The Mordani sat across from them, slender and pale, their forearms folded in careful patterns that conveyed meaning only they understood. Dozens of other species filled the remaining seats. Some Sam knew well, others he had never spoken to in all his years of service. "Honored delegates," Sam began, his voice calm and steady, "I come before you today to present humanity's petition for full voting rights within this council." A ripple of movement passed through the chamber. Sam had made this same request 17 times before. The answer had always been the same. "For 3 centuries, humanity has served this council faithfully," Sam continued. "Our soldiers have fought and died in wars that protected species who had never heard our name. Our engineers have built the communication networks that connect your worlds. Our doctors have cured plagues that threaten to wipe out entire civilizations. Our diplomats have negotiated peace between enemies who had been killing each other for longer than our species has existed." He paused and looked up at the Valari delegation. High Counselor Zethrak sat in the center seat, his expression impossible to read. "We have asked for nothing in return except respect. We have asked to be treated as equals. We have asked for the same rights that every other species in this chamber enjoys." Sam's voice remained calm, but there was something different in it now. Something final. "Today, I ask you one last time. Will you grant humanity full membership in this council?" The chamber was silent for a long moment. Then High Counselor Zethrak leaned forward and spoke. "The Council recognizes humanity's contributions," he said. His voice was smooth and practiced. "However, the requirements for full membership are clear. A species must demonstrate sufficient cultural development, technological advancement, and political stability. Humanity has not yet met these standards." Sam did not react. He had heard these words before. They were lies, of course. Humanity exceeded every standard the Council had ever set, but the truth did not matter. It had never mattered. The Krethian High Speaker laughed from his seat. It was a harsh sound, like rocks grinding together. "Perhaps in another century the humans will be ready. They are still so young, so eager to prove themselves." More laughter rippled through the chamber. Not from everyone, but from enough. The Mordani delegates whispered to each other, their 4 hands moving in patterns of amusement. Even some of the smaller species joined in, eager to align themselves with the powerful. Sam stood perfectly still and waited for the laughter to fade. When it did, He spoke again. "I understand," he said simply. "Thank you for your time." He bowed once, turned, and walked back up the central aisle. No one tried to stop him. No one called out to him. He was just another human after all. Useful but ultimately unimportant. High Counselor Zethrak watched him go and felt nothing. The humans had been making these requests for decades. They always accepted the rejection quietly and went back to work. That was what made them so valuable. They served without complaint. They asked for little. They never caused problems. The council moved on to other business. 72 hours later, everything changed. It started with small things. A human engineering team on the Mordani homeworld packed up their equipment and boarded a transport ship. A human medical station in Krethian space closed its doors without warning. Human cargo vessels that had been scheduled to deliver supplies to a dozen colony worlds simply never arrived. By the end of the first day, every human diplomat had left council space. They did not announce their departure. They did not file formal protests. They simply gathered their belongings and left. By the end of the second day, every human military vessel had withdrawn from its patrol routes. The defense networks that protected the outer colonies went dark. The early warning systems that watched for threats beyond council space fell silent. By the end of the third day, there were no humans left in council space at all. 300 years of presence, erased in less than a week. High Counselor Zethrak received the reports with growing confusion. He summoned his advisors and demanded explanations. They had none to give. "They simply left," one of them said, his voice trembling. "All of them. Every human in council space has returned to their own territory." "That is impossible," Zethrak said. "There are millions of humans working throughout our systems. They cannot all have left." "They have, High Counselor. We have confirmed it. The humans are gone." Zethrak stood at the window of his private chamber and looked out at the stars. Somewhere out there, in a small cluster of systems that the Council had always considered insignificant, humanity had built its own civilization. The Terran Compact, they called it. A modest collection of worlds that produced nothing of particular value and threatened no one. At least, that was what Zethrak had always believed. Now, watching the first reports of chaos begin to filter in from across council space, he felt the first cold touch of doubt. The humans had always been there, doing the work that no one else wanted to do. They had been so quiet, so reliable, so easy to ignore. What had the council done? Zethrak did not know the answer, but he was beginning to fear that he would find out very soon. The Krethian warship fired its main cannon and tore a hole through the Mordani cruiser's hull. Bodies spilled into space. The Mordani ship returned fire, its energy weapons carving burning lines across the Krethian vessel's armor. Within minutes, both ships were crippled and drifting. This was the third battle in as many days. Ambassador Lyra Voss had spent 40 years preventing exactly this kind of violence. She was a small woman with kind eyes and a gentle voice, but she had a gift for finding common ground between enemies. When the Krethians and Mordani had nearly gone to war over a disputed mining colony, she had locked both delegations in a room and refused to let them leave until they reached an agreement. It had taken 11 days. She had slept on the floor outside the door. But Lyra was gone now. She had left with all the other humans 3 weeks ago, and without her, the old hatreds had returned faster than anyone had expected. High Speaker Vorath of the Krethian Empire stood on the bridge of his flagship and watched the battle reports come in. His scales had turned dark with rage. The Mordani had attacked a Krethian transport convoy without provocation, or so his officers claimed. The Mordani insisted that the Krethians had fired first. It did not matter who was telling the truth. What mattered was that people were dying, and no one knew how to make it stop. Vorath remembered the human woman who had once stood before him and told him that his ancestors and the Mordani ancestors had once been allies. She had shown him ancient records that proved it. She had helped him see that the hatred between their species was not natural. It had been created by politicians and generals who needed enemies to justify their power. He had not believed her at first, but over time, he had come to respect her. He had even begun to consider her a friend. Now she was gone, and all Vorath could feel was anger. The communication networks failed on the 19th day. Dr. Pete Nolan had designed the quantum relay system that connected council space. It was a brilliant piece of engineering that allowed instant communication across distances that would otherwise take years to cross. Every species in the council depended on it. Trade, diplomacy, emergency services, military coordination. Everything ran through the relay system. Pete had tried to teach others how it worked. He had written manuals, conducted training sessions, and begged the council to develop their own expertise. But no one had listened. Why would they? The humans were always there to fix things. That was what they were for. Now, Pete was gone, and the relay system was breaking down. The quantum matrices required constant calibration. Without proper maintenance, they drifted out of alignment. Messages arrived garbled or not at all. Emergency calls went unanswered. Ships lost contact with their home worlds and wandered blindly through space. The Volari sent their best scientists to study the relay stations. They understood the basic principles, but the details were beyond them. Human engineering had always been strangely advanced, as if they saw connections that other species missed. The Volari had never bothered to wonder why. They had simply assumed that humans were useful tools, nothing more. That assumption was proving very costly. Food shipments to 17 colony worlds stopped on the 24th day. Captain Kate Murray had commanded the humanitarian logistics fleet for 15 years. Her ships carried food, medicine, and supplies to colonies that could not produce enough to sustain themselves. It was unglamorous work. No one wrote songs about cargo pilots. But Kate had loved it anyway. She had once told a reporter that every container of grain she delivered meant children who would not go hungry. The council had never created its own logistics system. Why would they? The humans did it for free. It was part of their endless effort to prove themselves worthy of respect. Now, Kate and her fleet were gone, and millions of people were beginning to starve. High Counselor Zethrak called an emergency session of the council. The great chamber felt different now, emptier. The human delegation's seats sat vacant, a constant reminder of what had been lost. "We must find a solution," Zethrak said. His voice echoed through the chamber, but it lacked its usual confidence. "The situation is becoming critical." The Krethian High Speaker slammed his fist on his console. "The situation is your fault, Volari. You drove the humans away with your arrogance." "Our arrogance?" The Mordani First Minister rose from her seat, her forearms spread wide in a gesture of outrage. "It was your mockery that pushed them over the edge. We all heard you laughing at their ambassador." "You laughed as well," the Krethian shot back. "Enough," Zethrak said, but his voice was weak. The chamber erupted into shouting. Delegates accused each other of causing the crisis. Old grievances resurfaced. Alliances that had held for centuries began to crack. Zethrak sat in his chair and watched the chaos unfold. He remembered the human ambassador's face as he walked out of the chamber for the last time. There had been no anger in his eyes, no resentment, just a deep, quiet sadness. The humans had not left in rage. They had left in sorrow. They had finally accepted that nothing they did would ever be enough. 300 years of service, and they were still treated as lesser beings. Zethrak had been part of that. He had voted against their petitions. He had dismissed their concerns. He had assumed that they would always be there, quietly serving, asking for nothing, grateful for whatever scraps of recognition they received. He had been a fool. The emergency session accomplished nothing. The delegates argued until their voices gave out, then returned to their ships to prepare for whatever came next. The Krethians reinforced their borders. The Mordani did the same. A dozen smaller species began evacuating their citizens from contested territories. The council was falling apart, and there was no one left to hold it together. That night, Zethrak stood alone in his private chamber and composed a message. It was addressed to the Terran Compact, to anyone who would listen. "We have made a terrible mistake," he wrote. "We did not understand what you meant to us. We did not appreciate what you gave. Please, help us." He sent the message and waited for a response. None came. The Valari diplomatic vessel crossed into human space on the 42nd day. It was the finest ship in the Valari fleet, decorated with symbols of peace and goodwill. High Counselor Zethrak himself stood on the bridge, watching the stars slide past the viewing window. He had never visited human space before. None of the Council's senior leaders had. It had always seemed unnecessary. The humans came to them, after all. They traveled to Council space to work, to serve, to prove themselves. There had never been a reason to go the other way. Now, Zethrak was going to beg. The border station appeared on the sensors first. It was a simple structure, nothing like the grand fortresses that guarded Valari territory. But the weapons mounted on its hull were clearly visible, and the power readings suggested technology that the Valari did not fully understand. "Attention Valari vessel," a calm voice said over the communication channel. "You are entering Terran Compact space. State your purpose." Zethrak stepped forward and spoke carefully. "I am High Counselor Zethrak of the Galactic Council. I am here to speak with your leaders. I come in peace, seeking dialogue." There was a long pause. Then the voice returned. "Hold your position. A representative will meet with you shortly." The Valari ship waited. Minutes passed, then hours. Zethrak paced the bridge, his patience wearing thin. He was the most powerful individual in Council space. He was not accustomed to waiting. Finally, a small human shuttle emerged from the station and approached the Valari vessel. It docked without ceremony. A single human walked through the airlock. It was Admiral Chris Daly. Zethrak recognized him immediately. Daly had been the Council's most decorated fleet commander for over 20 years. He had won battles that should have been impossible. He had saved entire species from extinction. The Council had given him medals, honors, and titles. They had never given him a seat at the table. Daly was older now, his hair completely white, but his eyes were still sharp. He wore a simple uniform with no decorations. He looked at Zethrak without expression. "High Counselor," he said. His voice was flat. "What do you want?" Zethrak forced himself to speak calmly. "Admiral Daly, it is good to see you. The Council has sent me to discuss the current situation." "There is nothing to discuss." "Please," Zethrak said. The word felt strange in his mouth. He could not remember the last time he had said it. "Our people are suffering. The communication networks have failed. Our colonies are starving. Wars are breaking out across our territory. We need your help." Daly studied him for a long moment. "You need our help," he repeated. "I remember when you needed our help to defeat the Sketh Horde. We lost 40,000 soldiers in that war. The Council gave us a certificate of appreciation. That was a mistake. We should have done more. You should have done anything, Daly said. For 300 years, we did everything you asked. We fought your wars. We built your systems. We fed your colonies. We asked for one thing in return, respect. You could not give us even that. Zethrak lowered his head. You are right. We were wrong. I was wrong. But surely you cannot let innocent people suffer for our mistakes. We are not letting anyone suffer, Daly said. We are simply no longer preventing the consequences of your actions. There is a difference. Please, let us make this right. We will grant humanity full membership, voting rights, trade equality. Everything you asked for. Daly laughed. It was not a cruel sound, but it was not kind either. You think that is what we want now? To come back and sit in your council chamber waiting for you to treat us as equals? We have our own chamber now. We have our own allies. 12 species have already applied to join the Terran Compact. They came to us because they saw how you treated us and they want no part of it. Zethrak felt something cold settle in his chest. Then what do you want? We want nothing from you, Daly said simply. We served. We asked for respect. We were denied. There is nothing more to discuss. He turned and walked back to his shuttle. The airlock closed behind him. Within minutes, the small vessel had undocked and returned to the border station. Zethrak stood alone on the bridge of his beautiful ship and understood that he had failed. The Mordani tried a different approach. They sent covert teams to the abandoned human outposts scattered throughout Council space. These facilities had once housed thousands of workers, engineers, and administrators. Now, they stood empty, waiting to be claimed. The Mordani hoped to salvage human technology. They believed that if they could understand how the quantum relay system worked, they could repair it themselves. They sent their best scientists, equipped with the finest tools their civilization could produce. They found nothing. Every outpost had been stripped completely. The humans had taken everything of value: computers, equipment, research notes, personal belongings. Even the furniture was gone. All that remained were empty rooms and bare walls. The Mordani scientists searched for hidden compartments, secret databases, anything that might have been left behind. They found nothing but dust. In one outpost, they discovered a single piece of paper pinned to a wall. It contained 2 words, written in the human language. We remember. The Mordani team leader stared at those words for a long time. He thought about all the times his people had dismissed human contributions, laughed at human requests, treated human workers as servants rather than partners. The humans remembered all of it, and they had taken everything with them when they left. On the 53rd day, the Sketh horde attacked. The Sketh were ancient enemies of the Council. They lived in the dark spaces between stars, emerging periodically to raid and destroy. For decades, human military strategy had kept them at bay. General Nancy Cole had designed the defense networks that protected the outer colonies. She had trained the fleet commanders who patrolled the borders. She had written the tactical doctrines that turned the Sketh's own aggression against them. Now Nancy was gone, and the Sketh knew it. They struck the outer colonies first. 3 worlds fell in the first week. The Council fleets responded, but they were disorganized and confused. Without human coordination, they fought as individual units rather than as a unified force. The Sketh picked them apart one by one. High Counselor Zethrak watched the reports come in and felt despair. The humans had not just been servants. They had been the foundation that held everything together. Their engineers, their doctors, their soldiers. They're diplomats. All of it had been essential. All of it had been taken for granted. And now, it was gone. Zethrak composed another message to the Terran Compact. This time, it was not a request. It was an apology, a true apology, without conditions or expectations. "We were wrong," he wrote. "We treated you as less than what you were. We took everything you gave and offered nothing in return. I do not ask for your help. I do not ask for your forgiveness. I only ask that you know that we finally understand what we lost." He sent the message and waited. This time, a response came. It was 3 words. "We are listening." The council chamber was half empty now. 12 species had officially withdrawn their membership. Their seats stood vacant, their symbols dimmed on the great walls. The remaining delegates sat in uncomfortable silence, avoiding each other's eyes. 4 months had passed since the humans left. In that time, everything had changed. The Sketh Horde controlled 7 former council worlds. Their black ships prowled the outer territories, striking without warning and disappearing before any response could be organized. The defense networks that had once held them back were useless without human maintenance. The tactical plans that had predicted their movements were useless without human analysis. The communication networks still functioned, but barely. Messages took hours to reach their destinations instead of seconds. Emergency calls went unanswered, ships disappeared in the vast emptiness of space, and no one knew they were missing until it was far too late. The famines had spread to 31 colonies. The Council had tried to organize its own supply system, but no one could agree on priorities. Every species wanted their own worlds fed first. Every species blamed the others for the shortage. Meanwhile, children were dying because food that existed on one world could not reach another. High Counselor Zethrak sat in his chair and listened to the latest reports. His advisors spoke in careful, measured tones, but their fear was obvious. They were waiting for him to fix this. They expected him to produce a solution from nothing. He had none to give. "The Krethians are demanding that we divert all military resources to the Mordani border," one advisor said. "They believe the Mordani are responsible for the supply shortages." "The Mordani claim the Krethians have been hoarding grain," another added. "They are threatening to seize Krethian cargo vessels." "The Valari merchant guilds are refusing to transport supplies without guaranteed payment," a third said. "They say the risk is too high." Zethrak closed his eyes. 300 years of peace, prosperity, and progress. All of it built on a foundation that no one had noticed until it was gone. The humans had not been important because of what they could do. They had been important because of what they chose to do. They had chosen to serve, to help, to build connections between species who might otherwise have been enemies. They had done the work that no one else wanted to do, not for power or profit, but because they believed it was right, and the council had rewarded them with contempt. A junior aide entered the chamber and approached Zethrak's chair. "High Counselor," she said quietly. "There is someone here to see you. She says her name is Grace Kim. She is from the Terran Compact." Zethrak looked up sharply. "A human? Here?" "Yes, High Counselor. She arrived an hour ago. She says she has been authorized to speak on behalf of her government." For the first time in months, Zethrak felt something other than despair. It was hope, fragile and uncertain, but real. "Bring her in," he said. Grace Kim was a small woman with short dark hair and calm brown eyes. She wore a simple gray suit with no decorations or symbols of rank. She walked into the great chamber as if she belonged there, as if she had always belonged there. Every eye in the room followed her as she approached the speaking platform. The delegates had seen humans before, of course, but they had never really looked at them. Now they looked, and they saw something they had missed for 300 years: strength, quiet, patient, unshakable strength. Grace stepped onto the platform and looked out at the assembled delegates. She did not smile. She did not frown. Her expression was perfectly neutral. "Honored delegates," she said. Her voice was soft, but carried easily through the chamber. "I am here because you asked us to listen. We have been listening. Now, I will tell you what we have heard." She paused for a moment, letting the silence build. "We have heard a civilization that is falling apart. We have heard species that once called themselves allies, now preparing for war. We have heard millions of innocent people crying out for help that will not come. We have heard the consequences of choices that were made long before any of us were born." Her gaze swept across the chamber, touching each delegation in turn. "For 300 years, humanity served this council. We asked for nothing but respect. We were patient. We were hopeful. We believed that if we worked hard enough, if we proved ourselves worthy, you would eventually see us as equals." She shook her head slowly. "We were wrong. Not about our own worth, but about your ability to recognize it. You could not see us as equals because you did not want to. It was easier to see us as servants. It was more comfortable to believe that you were superior." The Krethian High Speaker shifted in his seat, his scales darkening with shame. The Mordani First Minister lowered her head. Even the other Valari delegates could not meet Grace's eyes. "We did not leave to punish you," Grace continued. "We left because we finally accepted the truth. We could not make you respect us. We could only respect ourselves, and that meant walking away from a relationship that was destroying us." She took a breath and her expression softened slightly. "But we are not monsters. We see your suffering and we feel sorrow. We remember the individuals who treated us with kindness, even when their governments did not. We remember the moments of genuine connection, the friendships that crossed species lines, the shared dreams of a better future." Grace looked directly at Zethrak. "You asked what we want. The answer is simple. We want what we always wanted: partnership, equality, respect, not as a reward for our service, but as a basic condition of any relationship worth having." Zethrak rose from his chair. His legs felt weak, but he forced himself to stand straight. "You have it?" he said. His voice cracked slightly, but he did not care. "Whatever you ask, full membership, voting rights, trade equality, anything." Grace studied him for a long moment. "Those things are not enough anymore," she said. "The old council is broken. It was built on inequality, and it cannot be fixed. If humanity returns, it will not be to join your council. It will be to help you build something new." "What do you mean?" "I mean that the Galactic Council must end. In its place, we propose something different. A galactic assembly built on true equality. Every species with one vote. No hierarchies, no special privileges, no lesser members. Everyone equal, or no one at all." The chamber erupted in noise. Some delegates shouted in protest. Others shouted in support. The Valari merchant guilds were outraged at the thought of losing their advantages. The smaller species were thrilled at the prospect of finally having a real voice. Zethrak raised his hand for silence. It took a long time, but eventually the chamber quieted. "You are asking us to destroy everything we have built," he said. Grace nodded. "Yes. We are asking you to destroy something that was never built to last. We are offering you the chance to build something better in its place. And if we refuse, then we will wish you well and return to our own space. We will not help you, but we will not harm you either. The choice is yours." Zethrak looked around the chamber. He saw fear, anger, hope, and desperation in equal measure. He saw a civilization on the edge of collapse, held together by nothing but habit and memory. He thought about his grandfather, who had helped found the council. He thought about all the generations who had maintained it, who had believed that it was good and right and permanent. They had been wrong. "We need time to consider your proposal," Zethrak said finally. Grace smiled for the first time. It was a small smile, but genuine. "Of course," she said. "Take all the time you need. We have waited 300 years. We can wait a little longer." She turned and walked out of the chamber. Every eye followed her until she disappeared through the great doors. The future had arrived. The only question was whether the council would be brave enough to meet it. 6 months had passed since Grace Kim walked out of the council chamber. 6 months of debate, argument, negotiation, and change. The vote came on a cold morning in the standard galactic calendar. 47 species would decide whether to dissolve the Galactic Council and create something new in its place. The Great Chamber was full for the first time since the humans left. Every seat was occupied. Every delegation had sent its most senior representatives. High Counselor Zethrak stood at the speaking platform and looked out at the assembly. He felt old. The past year had aged him more than the previous century. But he also felt something else, something that surprised him: peace. "Honored delegates," he said, "we have discussed this matter for many months. We have argued and debated. We have considered every possibility. Now it is time to decide." He paused and took a breath. "The proposal before us is simple. We will dissolve the Galactic Council and replace it with a new body called the Galactic Assembly. In this assembly, every member species will have equal voting rights. There will be no hierarchies, no privileged positions, no lesser members. Everyone will be equal, or no one at all." The chamber was silent. Zethrak could feel the weight of history pressing down on him. "I know what I am asking you to give up," he continued. "I know that some of us have enjoyed advantages that we do not wish to lose. I know that this change is frightening. But I also know that we have no other choice." He gestured toward the empty human seats. "Look at those chairs. For 300 years, humans sat there and asked for nothing but respect. We refused them again and again. We laughed at their requests. We dismissed their contributions. We treated them as servants, not partners." His voice grew stronger. "And when they finally left, we discovered the truth. We needed them far more than they needed us. Our civilization began to crumble within weeks of their departure. Wars broke out. Systems failed. People starved. We learned too late what their service had truly meant." Zethrak looked around the chamber. "The humans have offered us a second chance. They have offered to help us build something better than what we had before. But they will not do it on the old terms. They will not come back as servants. They will only return as equals." He stepped back from the platform. "The choice is yours. Vote as your conscience dictates." The voting took 3 hours. Each delegation cast its decision in turn, their voices echoing through the ancient chamber. Some voted quickly, their minds already made up. Others hesitated, struggling with the weight of what they were about to do. In the end, the result was unanimous. The Galactic Council was dissolved. The news spread across known space within hours. On 1,000 worlds, people looked up at the stars and wondered what would come next. Some were afraid. Some were hopeful. Most were simply tired of the chaos and ready for something new. The Galactic Assembly held its first session 3 months later. The Great Chamber had been rebuilt. The old symbols of hierarchy had been removed. In their place, simple markers identified each delegation. No species sat higher than another. No species had more power than its neighbors. Ambassador Sam Porter walked down the central aisle for the second time in his life. But this time, everything was different. Every delegate rose as he entered, not because protocol demanded it, but because they chose to. The Valari delegation bowed. The Krethians stood at attention. The Mordani raised their 4 hands in a gesture of welcome and respect. Sam walked to the human delegation's seats. They were not in the back of the chamber, hidden away like an afterthought. They were in the center, equal to every other species. He sat down and looked around at the assembly. Grace Kim sat beside him, along with Admiral Chris Daly, Dr. Pete Nolan, Captain Kate Murray, and General Nancy Cole. They had all come home. Not home to the old council, but home to something new. Something they had helped create, High Counselor Zethrak. No, that title no longer existed. Simply Delegate Zethrak now, equal to all others. He stepped onto the speaking platform. "Welcome," he said, "to the first session of the Galactic Assembly. Today, we begin again." The session lasted for 12 hours. They discussed trade agreements, mutual defense pacts, humanitarian aid programs, and 100 other matters that needed attention. It was not easy. There were disagreements, arguments, and moments of tension. But there was also something else. Something that had been missing from the old council for as long as anyone could remember. Hope. After the session ended, Zethrak approached Sam in the corridor outside the chamber. "Ambassador Porter," he said, "may I speak with you?" Sam nodded. "Of course." They walked together to a small balcony overlooking the city below. Ships moved through the sky, carrying people and goods from 100 different worlds. The lights of the city stretched to the horizon. "I wanted to thank you," Zethrak said. Sam raised an eyebrow. "For what?" "For coming back, for giving us another chance." Zethrak hesitated. "When your people left, I was certain that you would watch us destroy ourselves. We deserved it. We had treated you terribly for centuries." Sam was quiet for a moment. "We could have done that," he said finally. "When we left, your civilization was weeks from collapse. We could have watched you burn. Some of my people wanted exactly that. They said you had earned your fate. Why didn't you?" Sam looked out at the city. His expression was thoughtful. "Because that is not who we are. We did not serve you all those years because we hoped for a reward. We served because we believed it was right. We believed that if we worked hard enough and long enough, we could make the galaxy a better place." He turned to face Zethrak. "When we left, we did not stop believing that. We simply accepted that we could not make you see our value. We had to see our own value first. We had to respect ourselves before we could expect respect from others." Zethrak nodded slowly. "I think I understand." "We wanted partners, not subjects," Sam said. "We wanted friends, not servants. That is the difference between us and the old council. You wanted power. We wanted connection." He smiled slightly. "Now we have a chance to build something based on connection instead of power. It will not be easy. There will be problems and setbacks, but I believe it is possible. I believe we can create a galaxy where every species is valued for what they contribute, not ranked by how much power they hold." Zethrak looked at the human ambassador. For the first time, he truly saw him, not as a representative of a lesser species, not as a useful tool, but as an equal, a partner, perhaps in time, a friend. "I believe that too," Zethrak said. They stood together on the balcony as the stars came out overhead. Somewhere out there, the Terran Compact continued to grow. Species that had been ignored by the old council were finding new homes in human space. The galaxy was changing, and the change was just beginning. Sam Porter had walked out of this chamber once, carrying the weight of 300 years of rejection. Now he had walked back in, carrying something far more valuable. Hope for the future. A future where humanity was not a servant, not a tool, not a lesser species to be tolerated. A future where humanity was simply human. And that was enough. The stars shone down on the new galactic assembly, and for the first time in centuries, the future looked bright.